So it's 2:30, which means we have Ken Shamrock on the phone. He is promoting the Penthouse panel on May 20th, Saturday in Chicago. If you are in the Chicago area, you can buy a ticket to that. It's a really cool event they've done in Chicago a few times. Basically, they get some MMA legends together. I think last time Matt Hughes was on the panel. I'm drawing blanks at who the other guys were on the panel, but it's all legends and big names of the sports. This week, they're doing a little bit of a Lion's Den theme.
Yeah.
Ken Shamrock, Frank Shamrock, and Guy Mezger, three legends of the sport, all sitting there talking. So, we're excited to get to talk to Ken.
Absolutely. So, we good to go? Yeah? Okay. All right, Ken, thanks for being on the show. Really excited to chat with you. I remember back when I started training, I was in high school. Someone gave me, one of my coaches, Ramiro, gave me your book, your memoir, Inside the Lion's Den. It was so much fun reading that. And one of the things that stands out to me was when you first went to Japan to do pro wrestling and mixed rules fighting like pancration and forerunner of MMA. And you talked about being a new guy in the gym there and the intense training, how rough the guys were, the injuries you sustained and had to train and fight through, the thousands of squats you would have to do at a time. Looking back at those moments when you were in a new country, learning new things, getting beat up, pushing your body past your limits and fighting through injuries, what was your motivation? Did you see a viable career at the end of that tunnel? Did you just want to show the rest of the guys in the room that you could hack it? Like, what really was driving you, would you say?
Well, first of all, I didn't have much to really lean back on. Came from a group home, didn't have really much of a college education. So for me, really, it was about becoming somebody and needed to find what my niche was. I didn't want to go back to where I came from, which was, troubled youth and nothing but trouble, getting in trouble, and then trying to drag myself out of that trouble. So I felt like I found something that I felt like I could be really good at, and I loved doing it. And so really my mindset was really to become at least become something. And I felt like this sport, this event could do that for me. And once I got into it, my mindset was like nobody was going to be better than me. I was going to do whatever it took for people to say my name whenever they mentioned this event. I wanted to be that guy.
And was there a moment where you felt you could be that guy, like when you knew you could be good at this and catch on?
Well, I think when I had my very first match in Japan and people started chanting my name, I didn't even know it until Sammy Saranaki told me they're chanting your name. That was my first fight. And I think once I heard that and the training that went into that first fight and then my first fight, once I heard that, I was like, I'm home. I found something. But then it turned into now being the best. I was nowhere near those guys, like Kanaki, Suzuki, or Takada, or Maeda. I was nowhere near those guys. And yet, my first fight, my desire was to beat them. My desire was to dominate this league. And so then I started down that path. I knew how to do it, and was to put the effort in, put the time in, do more than the next guy, and be completely focused on my direction. And that's what I did.
Was that, Ken, the first time in your life that you had felt that type of drive to be the best at something, or did you always have that attitude growing up, playing any of the sports you played?
That's what I did. Well, like I said, when I was younger, I was in our juvenile hall. I didn't have anybody to really raise me. Then I ended up at Shamrock Boys Home, where Bob Shamrock became my parent through the ward of the court. And so when I started into sports, I had a lot of anger and frustration. So I directed my anger and frustration into that. But then it became something positive, which I didn't know at the time. But I felt good that people were patting me on the back for being aggressive and for being that guy people feared. And even though in my mind it didn't seem normal, but I said, well, fine. I said, if I can knock the snot out of somebody and blow snot bubbles and they're going to pat me on the back for it, then I'm in. And so it really just started down that line where people started to care. They worked extra time with me to make my grades get better. People spent time with me to make sure I didn't get in trouble. It seemed like I was getting special preferences. And because that was happening, I felt like I was important. And so I started working harder to get more of that. And really it just became a process for me and a way of life for me. I knew where I could actually get that pat on the back. And that's really what most kids, when they're in that position, they really want to be accepted. And if they're not, they're going to find ways to make people recognize who they are.
Did sports give you an outlet to get rid of that anger when you were young, Ken, like to get it out of your system? Or was it tough for you because you were all of a sudden getting rewarded for aggression, so it was maybe difficult for you to turn it off?
Well, I think that, and where I was lucky was that I had Bob Shamrock, who later became my father. But he really helped me, kind of compartmentalize it, I guess, if it's the right terminology, to be able to keep it on the field, keep it on the wrestling match, but don't take it out in public. And there was a couple of incidences where I, went beyond the lines because I wasn't understanding of all these things. And when someone got in my face, my first instinct was to punch him. And so he helped me understand through, different ways of discipline when those things happened. And he broke it down to me one time when he explained it in a terminology in football where he said people count on you. You got your teammates, you got the fans, the people that come to watch you, you got the teachers who put time into you, you got me and Dee Dee, who is my mom now, who care about you and want you to see you succeed. There's so many, that your friends. There's so many people around you now that believe in you. So when you do something that hurts these people, it's not just you that's getting hurt. There's all these people around that you've built a relationship with now. And I said, I started to understand it. And he said, it's no different than, when you're in outside of all of that. If you get in trouble, there are still people who care about you, not just on the football field when you break the rules and you're penalizing the team and you're costing maybe a championship. I said, but it's also in life. The same thing works in life where you break the rules. All those same people you are hurting. So you can't just go out there and punch somebody in the face and not think that there's going to be people that are going to get hurt over your actions, because there is. And so for me, it really helped me understand life through sports.
And you talked about sports giving you a path to become somebody and people that would go on to be your family, like Bob Shamrock when he adopted you. So much of your life, because you certainly did become someone and someone who was well known and famous in multiple realms, in fighting and professional wrestling internationally and here in the United States. You got famous, and so much of your life became public, and family drama became public, and many of your struggles were publicly discussed as well. I'm just kind of curious. It would seem like you wanted to become someone. You wanted people to know your name. Has fame ever become even just a little bit of a burden for you?
I can answer that pretty clearly. It hasn't been. I've always been open about what has happened to me, the things that I've gone through, because I feel like it's just another avenue for me to vent my frustrations or my anger or my hurt. It's being able to let other people know where I've been and what has happened and the way I've gotten out of it. And that just because I've gotten out of it doesn't mean that it's gone. It doesn't mean that it doesn't still bother me, because it does. But it's just being able to recognize that it is bothering you and that it's pushing you in a direction, and that you're able to stop yourself from doing something stupid because you're going through something. So over time, you can understand those feelings, and you can understand the different things that are happening to you, and be able to control them and not put yourself in a bad situation. So I've always been open about who I am, where I've come from, and all the things that have happened to me. And I think because I've done that, I'm not afraid of people bringing it up or talking about it, because it's not going to shock anybody or me when they do.
Ken, we don't know how much you follow MMA now and the different happenings at current events, but as a fan since I was 10 in 1993, watching the first UFC and covering it for a living since 2005. It's right now, 2017 seems like a really unique moment. In the past, we had individuals like yourself every once in a while would speak up or be critical of promoters like the UFC regarding pay and treatment and actually kind of battle with promoters and talk about different issues. Right now, though, to me, I can't remember another time in the sport of MMA's history where we've had more named fighters speaking out against the UFC, battling with the UFC regarding pay, benefits, treatment, and things of that nature.
I've always said that was going to be a problem. As soon as this all catches up, it's going to be a nightmare for the Fertittas and Dana White because of not exposing the amount of money that was being made and what they were actually paying themselves, as opposed to what the fighters who were actually bringing in the fans, what they were actually making. A lot of them were like happy because they got $500,000 or $1 million, or even up to a point where some of them made over $1 million, and then fans would say, "Oh, what were you complaining about? You made $3 million," and then because they don't know, they don't get to size it up against what the actual company is making, which is up to $100 million when you were actually making the $3 million, and that you were the main event, you were the marquee guy that was bringing in that $100 million, and that you wanted to get 1% of that. So for me, I think that has always been, at least in my mind, was always going to be an issue, and I don't think we've seen the worst of it yet because the books haven't been opened up yet. We've got new owners. I believe in some time, if that does ever happen, which someday it will, I just don't know whether it'll be in my lifetime or whether in the next one. I don't know. But I know it's going to happen because it always does. It always rises to the surface. I think when that happens, I think then it's going to be very difficult. Maybe not for the Fertittas because they've been in this business a while now. They're used to this kind of stuff. But Dana White was definitely the face, the guy that stood in front of the cameras and that boasted on how great they were doing, and then making excuses of why they weren't paying the fighters. But I think when that does come out, and they do see the amount of money that was being made when the books do open up, I think it's going to be hard for Dana to walk around in public. And listen, I'm not saying this to be mean or vengeful or anything like that. I'm just saying it because it's something that I believe in. Listen, it's my opinion, so don't go freaking out if people are reading this and saying it's true, because it's not true. It's my opinion I think is going to happen.
Ken, you've dealt with so many promoters over the years as a fighter and wrestler, and you've always seemed to be aware of your worth and said and done whatever you needed to behind the scenes or in public to kind of ensure that you get that. Is that an attitude that you've always had, or did it take getting burned a couple times to become that way?
That's not, in my opinion, is not the way that I do things. Listen. I accept whatever I made. I've got no qualms about me doing the contract. My only qualms was that I didn't get to negotiate from a fair stance, because I wasn't getting to negotiate from the numbers, the real numbers that were coming in, and all the back stuff that we don't get to see. I wasn't sitting in a room being able to negotiate from a fair stance. That's my only thing. But because that's what happened, it is what happened. The only time I speak up is when I actually are on the outside looking in and seeing what they're doing to other fighters. It has nothing to do with me, because I am set with what I have done, and up to this point, I'm not fighting for anything for myself. What I'm trying to do is fight for at least some equal pay for the fighters now, and for the fighters that when I was actually going through there and ended up, the younger guys were coming up, I was actually speaking up for them, not for me, but for them, because I felt like the direction that it was going, that it wasn't going to be a pretty sight at the end of it. And I think, hindsight now, it's always 2020. Now we're starting to see what I was saying in the earlier days about how I believed that they weren't being paid fair, and I was being told to shut up. By fighters and by the organization, and blackballed in many situations because I was speaking about something that I believed was true. And now I think that, now that you look at 20 years down the road, I think that people now are saying, okay, maybe Shamrock was right in what he said.
Well, you talked about speaking up for other fighters from things you saw from the outside. Would you ever consider, Ken, working specifically to help organize other fighters as part of a fighters association or a labor union?
Well, listen, I'm not an attorney. I'm not an organizer per se in any political sense. I basically, I see something wrong or something I feel is wrong, I speak out. And I have no problem supporting anybody that does do something like that I believe is doing the right thing. But as far as me leading that, I don't think I'm the guy.
Ken, one of the things we wanted to ask you about most, you fought for so long, is the transition from being a very active athlete and competitor to the path towards retirement. The sports world seems really cruel because you can be a really young man or woman but be an old athlete. And as a professional athlete, you have so much of your identity wrapped up in competing. You have so much of your professional and your personal life wrapped up in it, your work. How hard is it to move to another part of one's life and adapt to heading or to needing to slow down and move towards retirement as an athlete?
Well, for me, it wasn't, I when I started into it, it was something I wanted to do. I had a passion for it. I started getting good at it. I felt like I could actually make something of myself. I felt important. I ran that whole gamut. I became the best that there was at that time in 2 different countries in the world, really. Got a nickname as the world's most dangerous man that was given to me by a TV station. So I really accomplished everything I ever wanted to. You could ever accomplish in that. Then it came to a point in time where my skills had diminished, and I wasn't in the position to really compete in a ranking system. I knew that. But then when people talked about retirement, I always heard people go, I want to go fishing, I want to go camping, or I just want to eat food, sit on the couch, and be lazy. And everybody has their own thing they want to do when they retire. I wanted to fight. I wanted to retire and just fight, enjoy myself. I didn't want to be in the competitive sports spotlight, although I was pushed into it. And I didn't mind it at all, don't get me wrong. But I also knew that I was not a world caliber fighter. And that, if they wanted to use me in the limelight and sell tickets and fill the arena, then so be it. I'll fight as long as the fights make sense. And if you look at my career, other than Tito Ortiz, with me being 40 years old, 39, 40, 42 years old when I fought him 3 times, out of my prime, way out of my prime, and him being in his prime, that was the only time that I really stepped out and fought something that probably wasn't the smartest thing to do, but I did it because I realized if I didn't, UFC wouldn't be where it's at today. I knew that if somebody didn't step in and build the ratings and try to get the UFC back up again, that they would close the doors. And then we would have different people trying to start it up, and we'd have all these little things running around. Maybe somebody comes in, builds another organization, and it flies. I don't know. But I knew at that point in time that I had an obligation to step in the ring and fight Tito Ortiz in order to bring the ratings up and save MMA. I believe that. That's just my opinion. And I did that. After that, I went out and I fought for my fun, for me to go out there and enjoy my life, being able to compete and train and have that atmosphere and fight all over the world in different events and being able to fight people that would be somewhat in my caliber, because I knew I had, a broken back, a broken neck, busted shoulder, and a knee that had all been replaced, but I was not moving well from the stand-up to the ground, no question. But I still loved enjoying the competition. So I went out in a safe sense, and I picked fighters that I felt like, hey, I'm not going to get destroyed here, but I can at least go out and have fun. And it wasn't anything other than me retiring and within my own sport and being able to go out and have fun with it. That's it.
Of all the places you have competed and performed in across the world, Ken, do you have a favorite?
Well, I wouldn't say favorite, but as far as the actual style, I enjoyed Pancrase because it was there's a few things I could change that would make it the ultimate, but I really enjoyed the idea of when you hit the ground that it was strictly submission, that you had to be very skilled in both areas, the striking and the submission. Because on the ground, if you took somebody down in mixed martial arts, no holds barred, you could just pound a guy, right? I mean, you don't have to have submission skills. You could just pound on him.
Right.
And the submission guy has to work through those punches. And I get it. I love both of them. I really did. But I thought that the vanquish style really forced fighters to be very skilled in both stand-up and the ground, because you couldn't bail out on the ground with just striking.
So, Ken, have you seen what Eddie Bravo has been doing with his combat jiu-jitsu, where it's submission grappling, but open hand strikes are allowed on the ground?
Yeah, I think that, in my opinion, I think that I like that. I like it when, you know, you can mix the no holds barred kind of system in with the actual MMA system.
We talked about this when we had Cole Miller on a few weeks ago with the EBI combat jiu-jitsu, and we kind of saw slaps happening for the most part, not really true hard palm strikes. And Ken, there is a difference. You fought under rules where palm strikes were allowed. There's a difference between a real hard palm strike and just a slap.
Yeah, absolutely. A palm strike is more dangerous than a punch if it's done right. You hit a guy's nose and that bone. I mean, that's a real deal there. If you hit a guy straight up into the nose, there's a good chance you can drive that bone into the brain. I mean, it's very, very rare and very hard to do, but the potential is definitely there.
So how are you spending your time these days, Ken? You talked about transitioning in your life. What have you been up to? What do you do?
Well, right now, I mean, if you look at my social media sites, you'll see that I'm really starting to reach out into a lot of the different types of businesses right now. I'm starting to learn the lingo. I'm starting to learn how to position myself through, you know, communication, and just really starting to understand how business it works. You know, and there's a lot of competitiveness in that. So for me right now, I really transitioned more into the business and the tech world, trying to catch up to everybody. But to me, it's exciting to see how it all works and to really get into the verbal confrontations, where they're really not verbal. It's very subtle and very, very, very wise people that know how to communicate and put themselves in a very good position to negotiate good terms in the business world or even in the tech world. So for me right now, I'm a baby in a man's world trying to learn it, but I've got a lot of people around me that are really helping me move fast.
Ken, could you talk to us about the event you got here this Saturday, May 20th in Chicago, the Penthouse panel? It's kind of cool sounding to us from what we've heard about it. You're going to be with two of your old teammates, your brother Frank Shamrock, Guy Metzger, two other former world champions, and sounds pretty interesting. You're going to be giving ticketed fans a chance to sit down with you in a pretty private setting and listen to stories, it sounds like, of you all coming up.
Well, for me, it's exciting because I think that it's the beginning of something that I want to continue to keep doing yearly and just keep adding more to it. But for this year, it's a Penthouse panel. It's going to be in Chicago, May 20th. And basically what we're going to do with myself and Frank Shamrock and Guy Metzger is we're going to talk about the tales from the Lion's Den, you know, the beginning days, genesis, if you might say, of actually the UFC. So it's going to be an exciting night. The doors open at 4 p.m. If you want tickets, you can get them at the Penthouse panel. Eventbrite is where you get the tickets, eventbrite.com, and then click on to Penthouse Panel and you can get your tickets there. And again, like I said, there's very minimal seats there. It's going to be more of a cozy environment. So if you want those tickets, you got to jump on quick and get them. So 4 p.m., May 20th, Penthouse Panel, Tales from the Lion's Den. Myself, Frank Shamrock, and Guy Metzger will be there talking about the Lion's Den and the actual beginnings of the no holds barred and MMA era.
That's a really cool concept. It seems like, Mike, that it's giving fans a chance to kind of do what we get to do all the time, which is talk to awesome world-class athletes. And, you know, they had the C2E2 comic book convention nearby a couple weeks ago. I had some friends that went to that. And, you know, I see a lot of people paying good money for like a quick handshake and a quick photo and like 2 seconds with someone that they really admire, an athlete or an actor. This is actually, Ken, basically fans getting to sit down in an intimate setting and hear from you guys with no rush, like an actual real experience.
Yeah, and also too, you're not only do you have, 3 guys from the Lions Den, which was the very first no holds barred MMA team put together, which I put that team together, but you have 3 world champions from the Lions Den talking of the Guy Metzger, who was a champion in pancreas over in Japan with myself, and also in MMA in the UFC, and then Frank the same, where he was tremendous over in Japan in the pancreas organization. He beat Boss Ruben for the vacant title, so Frank was champion there. And then, of course, he goes in and beats Tito Ortiz and becomes a champion in the UFC. So it's these great tales from 3 world champions from the Lions Den.
And where can fans follow you on social media, Ken?
Yeah, KenShamrock.com, and if you click onto that, you can go to all my social sites. I have Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and pretty much all of them, they're all attached to my website. So go to KenShamrock.com, and you can check out all the things I've got going on. If I was trying to list all the things that I'm doing now, it would probably take me 30 minutes. But it's very exciting times for me. It's a new beginning. I'm rebranding myself. Very, very excited about the future of Ken Shamrock, and also being able to keep the history of the Lions Den and of no holds barred in MMA alive.
Well, that's a worthy goal for sure. Thanks so much, Ken, for being on the X Rounds podcast, man. Really appreciate that.
Hey, I appreciate it, guys, and God bless.
I love that he's no holds barred. For people who don't know this sport wasn't always called mixed martial arts. Vale Tudo, no holds barred. When I started training, we called it NHB. Pretty cool. I love that. I love hearing that used again.
It's definitely an old term. I was talking to David Branch in Dallas at UFC 211, and when he said he first started training, it was no holds barred and Vale Tudo. It wasn't MMA.
That's awesome.
You forget that. You kind of take that for granted now when you talk about MMA, that there is that history, and it's cool that he got to leave it alive. Obviously, Guy Metzger is a Dallas person, so there's always been a special bond with me and that fighter in particular. I was telling Elias off the air that one of my first MMA fight I ever went to was I don't even remember what it was called. It was in a ballroom at a hotel. I think it was definitely very amateur oriented. There was a girl that I knew in high school through friends who was training at Guy Metzger's gym in Dallas, who was competing, and Ken Shamrock was kind of the overseer of affairs, the host, if you will. He was he came into the ring and did a little speech or whatever. And so that was cool.
That's really cool. And you were you left out kind of a funky part of the story, man.
We don't need to go there. we don't need to go there.
Follow Mike on Twitter for his lurid details. No, but how cool is that?
That'll be coming to a Flow Combat article soon. But yeah, it was cool. It's cool to hear him on. It's cool to hear him specifically talk about what he wants to do in the future and moving on and whatnot.